September 23rd, 2019, and ask for approval of the agenda.
So move you, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Motion moved by Councillor Penn, second by Councillor Wan. All heard it. Any question? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Contrary-minded? Motion carried. Approval of previous minutes, July 22nd, 2019.
I'll move the approval of those minutes.
And I will second that.
Thank you. Motion moved to approve the minutes by Mayor McGilvery, second by Councillor Wan. You all heard the motion. Is there any question? All in favor? Contrary-minded? Motion carried. Business arising from minutes, Community Works Program update.
Yes, Chair. We did hear back from the program, and unfortunately the town wasn't successful. However, they did suggest another stream. It's called the START program, and it's the same concept of 50% of up to 50% funding of up to $25,000. So I have put in an application under that program, and I have not heard back at this point.
Just enlighten me, that's the sewer and that down in the red row?
No, this was the marketing and promotions person that the town is looking at hiring.
Okay, thank you. Presentation by Regional Enterprise Networking, Sarah McIntosh, Wiseman.
Great. Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for the invitation. I've been working my way gradually around to each of the municipal units and Pictou Landing First Nation to make a bit of an introduction now that the Pictou County Regional Enterprise Network is up and running. So I've got a few slides to walk you through here, but certainly feel free to interrupt me with questions as we go at any point if you'd like. Oh, I'm updating up there, okay. I thought I'd just run through briefly for you a quick overview on who I am and how I came to be sitting in this role, as well as who and what the Pictou County Regional Enterprise Network is, and what we are referring to when we talk about a vision for economic development in Pictou County. And then a quick overview of some of our first activities in the last few months and what we're looking at in terms of next steps as we move forward. Just getting a bit of a lag here there. So in terms of who I am, the picture I've got up there on the right-hand side of the screen is actually before the CEO position was even posted. That was a project I was working on where I was doing a bit of a resource mapping with some nonprofits of what organizations do we have in Pictou County, who has something to offer, who's looking for something, and realized how many commonalities there were and potential for partnerships between so many different organizations that oftentimes there's just not a vehicle to bring those different organizations together or to start those collaborative conversations. And so when I saw this posting, as some of you know, I've been a partner at Mac for a number of years. I've been practicing labor and employment there for 15 years. I was happily employed and not looking for other work, frankly. But this picture is kind of representative of and paired nicely with the CEO posting that I think we've got a really incredible opportunity ahead for Pictou County right now, and appetite across all municipal units and stakeholders to be working together in a different and collaborative way. So I felt quite passionately about the opportunity to step into this role. I also sit as founder and chair previously of a group called Pictou County Safe Harbor. I've since stepped off that group, but I am still a director with 2-on-1 Nova Scotia, which is a provincial organization, and Pictou County resident and wife and mother of 2 boys as well. So some of you, or most of you, will probably be familiar with the REN structure, but this is kind of how I sketch it out for people as a refresh. We've got our 6 municipal units and Pictou Landing First Nations and the province of Nova Scotia, which is specifically Department of Municipal Affairs and Housing. Those are all of our funders and stakeholders, and each one has a representative that sits on what's called the Liaison and Oversight Committee. And then down below that committee sits the private board of directors that I report to and the staff that's working with me. So the way I kind of think of it is the what sits at that LOC level. So the LOC talks about what should our priorities for this region be. The LOC also has responsibility to decide who sits on that board of directors and also to approve the regional strategy. So to make sure that the REN is going to be heading in the right direction in terms of guideposts. But then the how, when you get down into the weeds of what does the business plan look like, how do we carry out that mandate and mission, sits at the board of directors level. When we talk about economic development in Pictou County, I think this was one of my first questions to the board before I decided to step into this role is what does that mean? And what I was really pleased to hear and have heard from all of our stakeholders as well is that we're not just talking about growth and development in the sense of expansion or trying to just get new businesses here. Obviously, that's an important piece when we talk about economic development and growth, but we really need to be looking holistically at what is it that makes our community thrive, and what are the pieces of the puzzle that are going to want to make other businesses come here, and that will allow existing businesses to keep their doors open and be successful within our community. So we're very much looking at it from the perspective of what are the businesses who are already here, and how can we help them to keep their doors open and be successful and thriving. The One Nova Scotia dashboard, this is basically where the REN comes from in some respects. So in 2014, the Ray Ivany report, the Now or Never, outlined 19 stretch goals for if we don't want to maintain status quo in Nova Scotia, if we want to do things differently, if we want to be economically successful, what should we be working towards? And so that framework and those 19 stretch goals really provide a lot of guidance to other RENs around the province, and Pictou County is one of 7 RENs. And so here in Pictou County, the way it works now is that, and this is new this year, is that the province identifies which of those goals it wants our community to focus on, and then the Liaison and Oversight Committee also has a voice in determining those. So the ones that the province has identified for us up to this point have been that they think we should be looking at new startup high growth businesses, an increased number of exports. And so by businesses that export, that means outside of Nova Scotia. So if someone is able to bring their product to New Brunswick, that counts as an export as well. And then also identified labor force participation and figuring out what are creating barriers to employment to existing community members, in particular in the African Nova Scotian, Pictou Landing First Nation, youth and immigrant categories. So what can we be doing to help people become attached to the workforce and to maintain year-round employment? This is the first exciting activity, and he's sitting in the back of the room. I'll introduce you to Divian Tharmaratnam, or Div. Moved here to join. He was, I said, the second half of the small but mighty REN team. We've now expanded a little bit beyond that. But Div had worked previously in Ottawa for 7 or 8 years, specifically in economic development. And the way I think of the way he described his work to me is he would meet with small businesses in particular and say, where are you? Where do you want to be? And then what can we do to help get you there? So again, it's that kind of grassroots approach of also looking to support the businesses that are already calling Pictou County home. And so Div has taken on the role of business outreach and innovation and is very deliberately working his way around the community and all around the county to meet with small businesses. Our next hire actually just joined us on Thursday of last week. And this is Adrian Hadley, and she is going to kind of fill a twofold role. One is administrative support, and the other is very specifically on employer support with respect to a number of special projects that we're running. And then finally, Matthew Berrigan is actually a shared position, so he works 1/3 of his time in Pictou County and then the other 1/3 between Truro and Cumberland RENs. And his position is 100% funded, and it was actually in the works before I even stepped into the role and before we became operational. So it's effectively, without coming out of our budget line, a great add-on. And he runs something called the Connector program, which is looking at international students and newcomers and recent graduates and trying to partner them through a bit of a mentorship program to try and keep them here in northern Nova Scotia. So in terms of our first activities, a lot of what we've been doing the first few months is just trying to get a lay of the land. And so by that, I mean working our way around and figuring out, what does a COA do? What are their different funding programs? What about Nova Scotia Business Inc? And really trying to just soak up all of the information so that we can be a helpful and effective guide and resource for businesses that are in our community. Funding applications was another. There were a few big ones that jumped up within my first couple of weeks in the role, so we've been working our way through those. Some of those are specifically for the REN to expand our budget where we see alignment with the mandates that we've been given. But in some other cases, it's helping direct local businesses or community organizations to funding that might be available for them. We've been doing the office setup. I've now got things relatively established there. We're at 112 Provost Street in New Glasgow, which is directly across from the Bank Montreal downtown between Kids First and Nova Scotia Hearing and Speech. And I actually spent almost 2 months before we settled on that location because as a resident of New Glasgow, I was kind of more inclined to go somewhere else. But that was the spot that was the best fit. But if Div and I are doing our jobs well, we don't want to just be based in that office. And so what we're looking to do is actually have a rotating schedule where we're based in each community on a regular basis. And so I'll be asking the town of Stellarton for some feedback on whether there's a date that's preferred for you. So whether it's, say, the second Tuesday of every month, and also having a friendly work site space that you think would be a good fit within the town. Governance structure, this is somewhere that we've got some very positive bragging rights. We are the only REN in the province that has a multi-year agreement. So the town of Stellarton and the other stakeholders signed a 5-year intermunicipal agreement, and that's really of incredible value when it comes to the ability to really get something up and running, and rather than just having a 12-month mandate. We're really quite excited about this, and the other RENs also are hoping to gradually move towards having similar multi-year agreements, but at the moment we're the only one in the province who has one. So we're still kind of working our way through, and I'll tell you the kind of expected timeline in terms of moving ahead with governance structure. But even in these first few months, when I say unplanned business outreach, those are the people who either came knocking on the door or projects that came to our attention very quickly before we even went out looking for them in a strategic way. And what's come through loud and clear is the need to take a very grassroots approach. So again, looking at the businesses that are already in our community. And the need and the interest in having help, sometimes using the REN as a sounding board, sometimes for specific questions. Certainly one issue that's come to the forefront is labor market shortages and the fact that those are rampant across all sectors, which was a bit of a surprise to me, frankly, that you have small mom and pop shops and small restaurants, including some here in Stellarton that are facing that challenge, and you have also large corporate organizations that are facing challenges in recruiting and retaining skilled workers here in Pictou County. So when we look at those labor market shortages, this one's a little slow to come up there. We're looking at it, we believe that immigration is one piece of the solution, but we're also looking at what projects can we be doing to help target the local members of our community who are either underemployed or unemployed. And so we're kind of bundling our approach to these labor market issues in 3 different baskets. One piece is immigration, one piece is projects that are going to be focused on specific sectors, both employer sectors and also population sectors. And then another is on the education side. So what can we be doing differently or be doing better to help facilitate creative conversations between employers that are facing these shortages and some of our educational institutions locally, whether that's at the high school level or at the community college level. And basically, we've just been working our way around every government and nonprofit sector and service provider we've been able to find so that we can make sure that they're aware that the REN is here, so that they know to think of us if there's a role that we can play in a project, and also that we're getting a proper lay of the land in terms of what services and resources they might have available for the organizations that we're working with. So in terms of kind of plan next steps, I've been doing this as kind of my stakeholder introduction phase where I've been working my way around to all of our stakeholders. And later this week, we're heading into governance training specifically with the board, following which we can then move forward with our strategic planning sessions, which we're hoping in late September or early October will be going ahead. Final budget approval will happen after that because, of course, we need to figure out what our strategic plan is before we decide where the spend will follow, and then business plan development and implementation. And the Department of Municipal Affairs and Housing gives a lot of support and guidance through that process as well. And we also have the benefit of, because we are the most recently established REN, we have the opportunity to learn from the other RENs and what has worked well, and also where they've come across some challenges as they've progressed. So I think that's actually to our benefit. The Chamber of Commerce dinner this year is happening in Pictou on October 17th, and I've been asked to be the keynote speaker at that, which I think is a really good opportunity to present the REN to the business community, so we're looking forward to that. And then we'll go ahead with our AGM in late October, simply because we have to have the budget done before we can do that. In future years, the AGM will typically be held in June, but because we were recently established, it's at an unusual time this year. The LOC communications strategy is something that I see as incredibly important, and that's one of the pieces that the other RENs have highlighted, that if things are going to go off the rails with a REN type model, it's when there's not enough communication and not the right kind of communication or with enough regularity. So that's a conversation that's ongoing with the Liaison Oversight Committee, and Mayor McGilvery sits on that committee on the behalf of the town of Stellarton. So we're going to talk about how and when do we have those meeting updates. I'll be providing regular updates to the board, and then anticipate those will be shared on to the LOC. And certainly either myself or the other staff members are happy to attend at any time that you think it would be useful. And we're asking that each of our stakeholders also keep the REN informed. So if there are key activities that you want us to be aware of or think that we should be attending, certainly pick up the phone or mention it to your Liaison Oversight Committee representative. But we want to keep those lines of communication open very deliberately. So in terms of a couple of asks that I have of the town of Stellarton, if you could give some thought to what you think the most effective work site would be. So if we were to come on a regular basis to have a place in Stellarton, is it a desk? We don't require anything fancy, but we think that there's value in having a consistent place where people know when they can come and find us there without having to come to our office. And I've already mentioned to certainly keep us informed of any activities and projects. And also through the LOC to give some thought to, are there certain sectors or even certain businesses that you think that we should be aware of in terms of prioritizing our outreach efforts? And then finally through the LOC to ask questions and to make sure that we're staying informed and giving feedback, because we know that you as councillors are going to be out there speaking with constituents who will want to know, what is this REN? What value are we getting for the fact that the town is funding this? And we want to be able to answer those questions. And so it's really important that we get the feedback and that we're put in a position where we can respond to those. And certainly a lot of what we're trying to do as we build out our strategies at the office are to be able to give you concrete measurables. So we're working with software programs so we can say, here's how many businesses we've reached this month. Here's how many are in the town of Stellarton and how many are in the town of New Glasgow. We want to be able to give you that kind of very direct and concrete feedback and data so that it'll be helpful for you in your conversations with your constituents as well. So I'm certainly happy to answer any questions you have, but that's kind of my 3-mile-high primer on the REN over the last 5.5 months.
Thank you, Sarah, for coming and giving us the update. We have been wondering what's been happening with RENs. I know it's just starting. We're glad to have you on board, and congratulations to your appointment. I don't know, one of the serious, I don't know how you can help it. I know if you can help it. I think you've been trying, but one of the serious problems we have here in Pictou County is across Nova Scotia is our health system. I know from my perspective, I had a son who moved back here in Pictou County, worked from his home. he has a doctor, but his wife and his 2 children don't have doctors. It scares me, not just because of him, but if we're going to ask people to move into Pictou County, we're encourage people to come here, and they come here and they can't find a doctor. They got to wait 2 and 3 and 4 years. It's really a serious drawback to bringing people to the county. I don't know if there's anything you can do about it, but I know we have appointed a new facilitator on the Pictou County Health Authority, and I know her not really well, but I do know her. I know she's a great goer, and I'm sure she'll be an asset.
Yes, certainly. So that's Nicole LeBlanc with Healthy Pictou County, I think you're referring to. And that's exactly the type of community partner that we believe at the REN we need to be working with, even though health in and of itself is not our mandate. However, it's when one of those first slides I showed with all the circles around economic development includes having a healthy community. So as an example on that, one of the things that we've been doing is working directly with Nicole LeBlanc to talk about, as she's building out materials that will help her to attract physicians and recruit and keep physicians in Pictou County. We're part of that conversation as well, because we know that's something that's relevant not only for physicians and medical staff, but for other people in other industries that we may be looking to draw here. But certainly that's an area where anything that we can be doing to support and collaborate on those health-related efforts, we're trying to do and also keep informed. We want to be careful, whether it's health or transportation or other topics, that we're not duplicating something that's already the mandate of another partner, but that we're at least in conversation with them so that if there's a gap that we're able to fill or a way that we're able to partner and collaborate, that we're there and present to be able to do that.
Thank you. Is there anybody else has questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, Sarah. How are you? Good. First of all, congratulations. I was very excited when you were appointed. You're a leader in our community. You've been involved in a lot of not-for-profit organization. Very impressive background, very impressive resume. So we knew that we had the right person for the job. Having said that, councillors are by nature impatient. So I don't know if you knew this or not, but I was part of the Pictou County Economic Development Working Group, which was the predecessor of the REN. And then the only thing that we have done in 3 years was to develop the REN. So we were spinning our wheels for 3 years. Us doing that was fine because we were all politicians and, we're not going to get mad at each other. But when it comes to someone like you, I think there'd be more appetite to see things happen a little bit faster and things happen at a much faster rate than we had been doing before. So what you have said earlier about the communication would be paramount in keeping us informed so that we understand what you guys are doing and how you're affecting our community and how you're affecting our residents so that we are able to go back to our residents and say, we are trying this, this, and this. And as Deputy Mayor Knight has said, about the Nicole, for example, this is something that Stellarton has participated in. And now when a resident comes to me and say, what are you doing about bringing doctors? And I can say, well, from a municipal perspective, we can't really do much, but this is what we have done that we can do, right? So it's very important to keep that line of communication open. And I really applaud you because it's not an easy thing. And I appreciate everything that you'll be doing. One last thing, I also want to commend Tivian. So I met Tivian yesterday, and it's funny because Tivian is new to the county, but everybody in the soccer world in Pictou County know who Tivian is. So he's been very active and very involved in the community that he lives in. And that's a great example of someone who comes to a new community and contributes to it, not only takes from it. So thank you very much.
A couple of comments on that, Simon. Div certainly earned that commendation, and it is not only the soccer world. I have lived here the majority of my life, and Divian, no question, knows more people in Pictou County already than I do. And in fact, with our most recent hire, part of the interview was specifically around how do you define community and how do you value community involvement. And so we're quite excited that our new addition, I think, very similarly will be quite heavily involved, because that's what makes community work in a rural or smaller center like Pictou County. I think if you don't have that community connection, if you don't have a pulse of what's going on and what matters in the different areas and to the constituents, it's really hard to affect change. So I appreciate that. With respect to your first comments, I couldn't agree with you more. And not only myself, but also the REN board and the Liaison and Oversight Committee know that it's really important that we find some small short-term successes. Absolutely, we're also planning for medium to long term, and we know that not everything is going to change and happen overnight. But we think it's incredibly important that we empower you with the information you need to answer those hard questions. And so that's one of the reasons that we're certainly going to be in partnership with the LOC trying to figure out the best way to do that reporting back, so that you have those concrete numbers on who are we connecting with, how are we connecting, and what are those businesses, or how are they actually benefiting from it. So as just one example, one of the things that we'll be doing is building out surveys. So every time we go in and we work with a business, or if Div goes in to say, where are you, where do you want to be, and what can we do to help you get there, we're also going to be soliciting feedback from those businesses at the end, so that if they've got any productive criticisms for us or questions, we're able to take that into account, but that also we can be turning back to the LOC and to the stakeholders and saying, here's what we've actually got on our radar and here's what we've done. So we're certainly very cognizant that it's important to show some short-term successes. Yeah.
Thank you, Sarah. And communications is number one priority. Does Mayor want to ask any questions or anybody else? Well, I guess we'll conclude. Thank you very much for coming, and we hope to see you back again. And I'm sure Susan Higdon, our clerk, will find you a spot here in the town hall somewhere. Rolling along, we'll go on to correspondence. United Way, Pictou County campaign request for donation.
Yes, so this was received, and just looking for a recommendation for council if this committee chooses to donate.
I make the motion that we donate $200 to United Way of Pictou County.
I'll second the motion.
The motion is by Mayor McGilvery and second by Councillor Pence that we donate $200 to the Pictou County United Way campaign. You've all heard the motion. Ready for the question?
Mr. Chair, just a question on, is it part of our annual grants or is this new?
This is not normally part of the annual grant.
So, Mr. Chair, I just want to raise my concern about the way that we are picking and choosing our donations. Some we agree to, some we don't. I'm not really sure what the rhyme or reason for it. So I just want to put that on record. Thank you.
Councillor Luan, I agree with you 100%. I'm always afraid that we're picking them. The only thing is, I guess, I'm going to liken it to the stop sign. We put up a stop sign and we put new. And the idea is to inform people, and so down the road. So this year we might have to slide and breaking some of our own rules, and then next year we'll have to be fast and firm on what we're doing. So you've heard the motion. All in favor, signal by saying aye. Contrary-minded? Motion carried. Thank you. Pictou County 4H, thank you for donations. Northern Subway AAA selects request for a donation.
Susan, what have we got left in our donation piggy bank?
To date, we have paid out in the annual grant budget line $7,718, and the budget line is $9,500, and that does not include the $200 you just approved.
I would like to put a motion as well to support to this group. And I'm not really sure what the council's wishes on that is, because I think it's a little bit too expensive for us. 150, we'll go with 150.
Second that.
The motion is to give a donation of $150 to the AAA Select, Subway AAA Selects. A motion was made by Councillor Lewan, second by Mayor McGilvery. You've all heard the motion. Are you ready for the question? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion carried. Okay, the other one is the Glen Haven statement. I think everybody had a chance to read it. Is there any questions in the Glen Haven statement? Moving on, Real Canadian Recreation, request for a donation.
The Real Canadian Recreation Society is a registered nonprofit society. One of their mandates is helping veterans who deal with PTSD.
I've seen this covered in the local media as well. I'd like to commend the gentleman for pursuing this option, Tyson Bowen. I think we should contribute to it. I think it's a field out by Green Hill somewhere where veterans can go to help treat their PTSD. I'd make a motion that we donate $200 towards this cause.
I'll second that, Your Worship.
The motion is to donate $200 to Real Canadian Recreation. The motion made by Mayor McGilvery, seconded by Councillor Pence. You all ready for the question? I looked it over myself, and I agree with you. It's a very worthwhile. With PTSD is a serious. It's becoming more prevalent in society, and especially amongst people that find themselves in extraordinary circumstances. Yes, veterans. You all heard. Ready for the question? All in favor? Contrary-minded? Motion carried. Thank you. Parkinson's Super Walk request for donation.
So I request that we just make it ratified here. If you can just move and second it.
I'll move it.
I'll second.
Moved by Councillor Penn, second by Councillor Lewan to donate to the Parkinson Super Walk request. It was already approved by Council through email. You've all heard the motion. Ready for the question? All in favor? Contrary-minded? Motion carried. Stellarton Albion's 2019 Nova Scotia 15 under AAA provincial champions request for a donation.
So move.
And I'll second.
The question is like to congratulate the Stellarton Albion's 2019-15 and under AA provincial champions. They're also the Atlantic champions. They went on and they won the tournament for the Atlantic, so congratulations to them. Undefeated, yes.
Yes, we watched some of the games. They're quite a team. Motion to donate to the Stellarton Albion's Nova Scotia provincial champions. Moved by Councillor Pence, second by Councillor Lewan. You all heard the question. All in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary-minded? Motion carried. Thank you. Number 7 is a noise bylaw. I guess it's something we don't have. We went through a lot of policies and there's some bylaws we don't have here in the town, but there were some questions earlier, and I guess with the new facility opening on Ford Street and the fact that I guess there'll be other things going on here in the town, we don't have a bylaw for noise. Is there any?
Mr. Chair, what I would suggest is maybe our town clerk could look at other bylaws within the municipal units of Pictou County and come back with a recommendation to council.
Mr. Chair, the only thing that I would like to be taken into consideration is the wakey that Stellarton is known for. We can't really have a bylaw that goes against that because it's part of our tradition, and I can't see us not having it.
I think Councillor Wan and talking, we spoke about that earlier, it's the same as if we have our homecoming dance and it's in the back of the parking lot. That's going to infringe on it, but there are special circumstances that, yeah, you can get permission through council. So are you all in favor of passing this on? Okay, so we'll pass it on to our clerk and she can look into it. Thank you. Hospitality draft. Policy draft. And a lot of this here, if I'm not mistaken, come from the provincial government requesting that all towns have a policy. And just for anybody that's wondering, if you go away or whatever, it governs the council or people on what they can and can't spend and so forth and so on. So they have to go by those rules. One thing I will point out, we don't, and even in our own policy, we don't pay for alcohol.
That is correct, Mr. Chair. So basically, this is something that has come down from the province of Nova Scotia. As well, it was noted in our management letter that was submitted to council from the auditors in July that this has not been in place. It's practiced by the town, but not officially in place. For example, like you had mentioned, we do not pay for alcohol or anything like that. But the hospitality policy deals with that. So in this instance where, for example, if a business wanted to come to town and the town council wanted to welcome them, this would protect the town and the taxpayers' money in a way that this is going to be an economic development benefit to the town, but it's not being overused. So this protects the taxpayer as well as the council members. So it's a draft policy, so it still can be amended. It's certainly something that if council wants to see some changes, they certainly can. But the foundation of both these policies on the expense and the hospitality is something that the province is recommending.
Read through the policy and I'm okay with it. I don't know if any of the other councillors or the mayor has any queries on it.
My only question is about the Audit Committee. They're listed as a signing authority, and do we have an active one? Or?
In that situation, we do not have an audit committee per se, so the audit committee is defined at this point as council members. So we are actively looking, and I'm plugging this right now, we're actively looking for a citizen of the town to sit on the audit committee. So we are required as a municipality to keep advertising until we find one. So we advertise every 6 months. And the only qualification to sit on the audit committee is that you do not have to be a chartered accountant or but you should know your way around a financial statement and be comfortable and understand what it means.
Thank you. So if there's anybody out there listening that wants to get on the audit committee, we got a position.
Your Worship, I read over the policies, hospitality and the expense policy. I don't have a problem with them, and I'd like to move them as written.
I will second that. And on the question?
Sorry, I knocked you out there. I knocked you out, sorry.
The hospitality on page 3, bullet 12. Requests for hospitality events shall be reviewed by either the town clerk or the designate or council. So am I to understand from this that at one point or another the council might not be aware of these situations and you would be allowed to make a decision on them?
For clarification, that is a typo because as you can appreciate, everything that the province brings down has CAO in it, which is an operational issue. So that would be and council, not or council. Thank you for the clarification.
A question on the expense reimbursement. On the third page, item 4, there's a dollar amount, there's no dollar in, should there be a dollar value in there?
There should be a dollar amount, but again, that was at the discretion of council of what they wanted. I purposely didn't put anything in there, so we can discuss that, or I can make recommendations based on per diems and that sort of thing.
Your recommendations would be appreciated.
Me again, go ahead.
I agree, Mr. Mayor. In order for this to be consistent and transparent with our resident, we need to let them know what we think is going to cost them, not make a judgment call every single time, and every council will be different. Thank you.
So, Councillor Pence, you want to rescind your motion, and we'll sit? No. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. We have a second. Can I have a seconder on that motion? Did you? Motion was passed by Councillor Pence, second by Councillor Wan, that we're going to go with the policy, hospitality policy. So if there's any changes, we can change it.
And the expense policy too, Mr.
Okay, both of them, and the expense policy. You've all heard the motion. Ready for the question? All in favor? Contrary-minded? Motion carried. Thank you.
So for clarification, that this will be presented to council on October 15th for final approval.
Thank you. Stellarton dispatch policy, and as where if we dispatch for 17 fire departments here in Pictou County, so maybe our clerk could fill us in.
Yes, so back in May, the town of Stellarton dispatches for 17 fire departments across the county. So back in May, Chief Husher met with the representatives from each of those departments, where they sat down and wanted to discuss some issues and some communication items. At that meeting, they decided to come up with 3 teams, one that would deal with communications, one that deals with best practices, and the third one was an audit of past, so everything's recorded. So they were going to look at some things, if they had an issue with something, they were going to look at that particular recording and audit what happened and how to learn from it. Then on earlier this month, they all came back together and presented this dispatch policy, and this is a procedure that all 17 departments went through line by line. Chief Husher went through it line by line with all the chiefs, and they agreed and are very, very pleased with this policy. So basically, because it is a policy, it has to be passed by council, but the procedure within, because they are the subject matter experts on the dispatch and how things run in an emergency situation. If they choose to look at different procedures from time to time, because they will be looking at this, I think if it's not annually, it's twice a year. So that's why they say no revisions can be made to this procedure, but it is a policy for the town.
Thank you, GOPs. That's good. Yeah, so we're moving on to the next one. Before we move on to an open forum. Did I miss something here? Okay, I'm sorry. Can I have a motion on the Stellarton dispatch policy draft?
I'll move that we approve the policy draft as written.
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
Moved by Mayor McGilvery, second by Councillor Pence. You've all heard the motion. Are you ready for the question? All in favor? Contrary-minded? A motion carried. Thank you. Yeah, I just want to, I guess, just want to, before we get into open forum, I had a phone call tonight which kind of made me feel good. To do that? I'm sorry. I was going off the old agenda. Fixed route proposal, I'm sorry.
To declare a conflict, and I'll step out while this is discussed.
So, Mr. Chair, this is a fixed route proposal, and I believe council is familiar with the concept that the town of Stellarton and the town of New Glasgow are looking at partnering up for a pilot project. It's a 1 hour, 1 loop, 1 bus program that would start in April, and it's a Monday to Saturday, 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. $3 fare for everybody. There will be discounts for seniors, youth, and child. They are going to be looking for corporate sponsorship as well. The fixed route would be owned by the towns of New Glasgow and Stellarton. Chad Transit will be contracted to manage the operation and provide a backup bus as needed. The bus would be an 18-passenger low-floor bus, and the ramp works significantly quicker than the traditional Chad bus. What this the draft budget for this for 2021 is looking at a $238,500 cost, and the town of Stellarton would be looking at in the 2022, and we're looking at make sure I get the right number here, $30,000, and then in 2023 it's $35,000. Because of the 2021, it's a pilot project, so it would be covered.
Yeah, thank you. The first year will be fully funded, and then the other 2 will be paying into it. I looked over the route. Actually, I drove it, and I'm impressed. The last proposal that was made, it was lengthy. It took in all the towns, and one of the things I didn't like, it didn't pass the seniors complexes. But this one hits every seniors complex. It hits the main streets. It hits all malls, hospital. Our area down, commercial area at the park. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head here, and it goes over to the mall. So it's really good. It's about 50 to 55 minute round trip, $3, and I think it's personally I can't make a motion on it, but I think it's an excellent idea. And the other thing that I do like about it, when the first proposal came out, I had hoped that they would put it under Chad rather than paying 2 managers to run the system. But by it being under the umbrella of Chad, that means we only have to pay half the cost.
And I would also like to note that when this concept was first introduced, it was introduced to all the municipalities in Pictou County. And it's a very costly, it's a service that's being provided. It's not expected to make money. And I just want that to be known that it is a service that we are providing the citizens.
2, this bus, I looked at the specs on it, and this bus has room for 2 wheelchairs, and it's not like your traditional hydraulic ramp. It's a drop-down ramp. It's small, it's convenient, and I think it's an excellent idea.
Well, Mr. Chair, it's been a while since we had a transit system in Pictou County. I feel that we should try it to see what happens.
Are you making that a motion?
I'll make it a motion.
I had a question first. Okay.
I'll second.
All heard the motion. You ready for the question? Go ahead.
Okay. My understanding is this is a 3-year project. So after the first year, if for someone for no reason it wasn't successful, we have to carry out the 3 years, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that's the commitment that the town is asked to make, a 3-year commitment.
And the other question I had was, we're partnering with New Glasgow on this. So if in the end of 3 years we decide it's a no-go, whatever's left would be divided equally among the 2 towns?
That is correct. Whatever assets are between the 2 towns would be divided based on the formulas or whatever.
Mr. Chair, I would echo. It is. Sorry. Mr. Chair, I would echo Councillor Pence's opinion on this. I would recommend this. And the reason for it, in my opinion, is if we want to move forward, we need to try this. One of the reasons that a neighboring town has been considered in the bottom 200 of the cities in Canada, is a big reason of it is because of the transportation, because the lack of it. And when someone outside of Pictou County looks at Pictou County, they don't really see, one town or the other. They lump all of us together. It is our responsibility for our residents to try this. If it's successful, that is great. If it's not, we have tried. I know that there are some residents that have spoken to me that they don't think it is a worthwhile idea, but I feel that it is. The way that things are going with our economy, with our level of poverty line, it is our responsibility towards our residents. So I would support it for the next 3 years.
Thank you, Councillor Wan. I noticed, I drive up and down Acadia, I live in Acadia, and I notice a lot of people walking to work. I saw a young lady the other day walking down Ford. I don't know where she was headed from, but I noticed there's different people that have to find their transportation back and forth. I know years ago my wife used to use the bus, and one of the reasons that she stopped using it was they changed the times, and it wasn't convenient for her to get there, and she found it very, very difficult. We had one vehicle, and it was very, very difficult for us to get back and forth to work, so I agree with you. So the motion was made by Councillor Pence, second by Councillor Wan, and we heard the question. All in favor? Contrary-minded? Motion carried. Thank you. Yeah. The next on the agenda is our homecoming statement. Is there any questions? The only thing we don't have on here, and it's kind of people don't realize, but there's other costs that are not on there. And one is the extra policing that we take on, and the extra and the town workers. So is there any questions on the statement?
I just want to thank the Homecoming Committee for their work. It was another year where we didn't lose. We, I think, made a little bit of money in the festival, actually, and it was very well received by all the residents, so thank you for that to the Homecoming Committee.
Thank you, Mayor McGilvery. The committee has picked up some more workers, and there's some more people coming on board, 4 more workers, and volunteers, I should call them. But if you know anybody out there that would like to get involved, we certainly would. There's lots of things happening, suggestions, if you want to pass them along. I know some of the residents are upset because we moved the dance. We had no choice but to move the dance. And this year, we're hoping to have it, coming up to have it back in town. We've been looking at the cost of tenting and that type of thing. And maybe if we have the tenting, we could use it not only just for the dance, but for other venues. But anyway, that's some of the things there. Thank you very much. No. Traffic lights, update.
Where do I start? So the traffic light situation has been dealt with and dealt with and dealt with again. We had our 4th accident in 18 months. Yeah. So basically, the town engineer and the traffic authority, who is Chief Husher, had been talking about what to do with the situation. So a bollard now has been implemented there on the corner, and the Chief Husher is also looking at erecting a sign, no right turn for trucks. So he's just doing some research on that to see if that would help. But the town engineer has said, nothing is perfect, and it's just they're trying to do things. They can't put. They can't just hang the light. They need a pedestrian. They need a pole for a pedestrian to change the walking ability. So they can't just hang the light. I know that's been suggested. So they're going to try this, the bollard and the no right turn for trucks over 32,000 kilograms or something like that. But, so that's the update on that. And insurance is, we're still working on 2 of the last 4 claims on that situation.
Thank you. There's some people out there that figure it's easy, you can just move the lights. You can't. There's gas lines and all different kinds of things underneath that concrete that you can't move. A lot of people wonder why it takes so long to revamp it. The problem is people have to come in from Ontario to fix it, and that's one of the big things. And it depends on how hard it's hit and what they destroy on it. Yeah, but just to emphasize the point, it'll be no right turns for larger vehicles or trucks.
That is being looked at by the traffic authority.
Thank you. Now, as I started before, I was on the wrong schedule. I had a phone call tonight, and or this morning rather, was talking to a lady who was quite happy because her son got a job at Zenabis, and her younger brother got a job at Zenabis. So I want to thank Mayor McGilvery for his hard work, and it's starting to pay out that some of the residents are starting to see employment. Open forum. Anybody like to speak at the open forum?
This is just going to be short. Thanks for giving me a minute there. That company in Ontario, this is a rumor going around now. I don't know, maybe you guys heard it. This company from Ontario that fixes the lights, we're their biggest customer. They're talking about moving their head office here.
It's funny from some of the citizens, but it's not funny for us when that light goes down. Let me tell you. You just check Facebook.
Patty Lloyd. I also want to thank you, Danny, about Zenabis, because it's my son got a full-time job and my brother got a full-time job, and there's other people I know that are starting there in the future, so it's really looking up. Really, really great. So I'm totally excited about it. Another question was regarding the bus that we're proposing. The route is community college. Is that part of the route? Maybe you can look into that. It is? Okay, because that's an excellent idea. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. So we seldom get good ones. Our next meeting is dated October 28th, 2019 at 5:30 p.m. Have a motion to adjourn, please.
So move.
Thank you, Gary Pence, the German Council.